Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is in the building and we're going to start on a new project. It's the 24 players under 24 years old or 24 and under in 2024. We're diving into all the best players 24 and under in the NBA. We'll give you all the details on the project here in a minute. But first, let's get the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Hello, what's going on, Bryce?
What's up, Sam? How are you? Before we let our listeners know how we got into this project, what it is and all of that, I watched Collateral the other night with my wife after you recommended it on the pod. So good movie. I enjoyed the whole thing. The ending left a little bit to be desired, but overall, I enjoyed it. Good recommendation.
You know, that is definitely the take for people a lot of the time, is that the ending is not quite as good as they want it to be.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes that happens.
It happens.
It's an ending that grows on you the more you watch it, though. I will say that. I think this is probably going to be a one and done for you, but as somebody who genuinely loves Michael Mann movies, and basically, I think there is a chance Michael Mann is my favorite director of all time. He is just genius in a lot of ways. My mother and father are coming to visit this week here in Australia, which we'll talk about scheduling after the show. But every year I order movies to my parents' house that you can get in the United States and then have them either ship them over or, in this case, bring them over. Miami Vice is on the list. Got a glorious Miami Vice. I can't even recommend for you to watch Miami Vice. That movie, it is so like cocaine ridden, it feels like, whenever you watch it, that I don't even know that you would enjoy it, but it is certainly a glorious ride.
So I'm looking at Michael Mann movies, and I assume these are the top ones for him. Collateral is the only movie I've seen of this list.
Yeah. The one you should watch is Heat. If you ever have 2.5 hours of time to carve out, Heat is probably the best heist movie ever made, I would say. So I would say that is your movie homework over the course of the next month is Heat.
Got it.
Okay. Bryce, so we're embarking on a new project here that I made you do, and I'm sure you're not particularly happy with me for it. Whenever I reached out to people that work on the NBA side, everything like that, they were like, first and foremost, you're an idiot for doing this because it's literally just going to make everybody angry with you. Second, they gave me feedback on the list. And most of the time it was like positive and it was, yeah, this is fine. Like, this is a completely reasonable list. There were a couple of, especially near the top. That's what everyone wants to talk about, is near the top, right? Like jockeying for, where do you put Zion? Where do you put, Paulo Banchero, Scotty Barnes, etc. Right? Like those were by and large actually the polarizing ones. Just what is Paulo's upside? What is Scotty's upside? And then trying to figure out like what Zion's career is. LaMelo was another one that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. Like he was exceptionally polarizing for teams. But this is a project that I did maybe 5 or 6 years ago with Cole Zwicker. And I'm doing it again with you because I find it to always be a really interesting, fun conversation more than anything. So let's kind of dive into the rules of what we're doing here. The project is the 24 under 24 in 24. These are the 24 best players, 24 and under, moving forward in the NBA. What is our age cutoff? Our criteria for age cutoff was December 31st, 2024. So if you were 24 years old as of December 31st, 2024, you made the cut. The big one there, I think, was Darius Garland, if I remember correctly.
Darius Garland is 24 until January 26th. The other two, John Morant, just turned 25 a week ago, and Jaren Jackson Jr. will turn 25 a little bit, about a month from now, next month. So
that is to say that Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant are not eligible for this list.
correct.
Darius Garland is eligible. We had to come up with an arbitrary date cutoff. It felt like the end of the year, being 24 at the end of the year, was the right cutoff for me, at least personally. Right?
Yep.
Second, what is our criteria for ranking? What I told Bryce was, we are utilizing both the future and the present. But given that these guys are 24 and under, most of their careers are ahead of them at this point. So projecting into the future on the guys that you believe in most and what they can be probably got weighted here a little bit more than what you will see in other lists, potentially, that would do a project like this. And where does that expertise or level come from, right? Well, it comes from literally a long time of scouting and projecting and doing all of this for many, many years at this point. So trying to figure out the guys that we believe in, trying to figure out the guys who we buy moving into that next level. So I'll ask you, as you kind of thought about this, what mattered to you most?
Yeah. So some of the things I took into consideration. The first thing was, what do I think this player will be in 5 years? I thought that was a really good barometer, because 5 years from now, most of these guys are entering the prime or right in the middle of their prime. Maybe the guys that are already 24, like they're 29. So I guess you could argue maybe they're starting to hit the end of it, but I felt like that was a good barometer. Who do I believe in the most 5 years from now? And once I got there, then I tried to consider team fit, because at the end of the day, guys that we think are the best players in the league are on good teams that are winning. And so we'll talk about one tonight. I'm interested to see how much pushback we get, but I think him being in the situation he's in, playing with who he plays with, is really playing into my factor there. I also really prioritize guys that I think are the face of the franchise or primary creators, those type of players at the top. And I will be honest, it was more talented than what I realized going in. I thought it was going to be easier at the top. And as I started to write down names on my list, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I think we all know who number 1 is going to be, but I thought 2 through 10 was going to be a little bit easier than what it ended up being. There was a lot more guys at this age and in this range than what I thought there was going to be that are very talented.
Yeah, I think what I would argue is that my top 2 were pretty clear.
Agreed.
And then honestly, from 3 to 12 was a total toss up. And then I had like 3 or 4 or 5 more that I knew had to be like in the top 17. And then from 18, 19, really top 18, I would say from 13 to 18, I felt like that was a grouping. And then from 19, honestly, through 35 or so was like a total group where it is really, really difficult to try and determine where to kind of put guys when. Right.
I agree. So I had the top 2. It's going to be, we won't get into that. I had then another group of 7 or 8, similar to you, 4 or 5 that I'm like, these guys are going to be on my list no matter what. I would say like 18 through 22, I felt very strongly I wanted those guys on my list, but it was still like, okay, am I overvaluing them, their roles, their roster construction, all of that? I really struggled with my last 2, especially. Like, I really struggled with those 2 guys. And both of those guys on my list, one was just wrong, as we talked about before the show, but neither of them ended up on our combined list. And, ultimately what our list is going to be today is a combination of you and I and what we did together. But Yeah, I mean, especially when you get into the 20s, it could go. We're going to talk about a lot of honorable mentions tonight that I really like. And so I think it speaks to kind of the depth of this list as well.
Yeah. So part of the reason, so the way these podcasts are going to be structured are we're going to do the honorable mentions plus from 24 to 19 tonight. Later in the week, we will do from 18 to 10. And then probably next Sunday, we will do 9 to 1. So that's probably the easiest way to structure it, we thought, because we're going to talk a lot about honorable mentions tonight. And that felt like to me, and you really, you're the one that kind of pushed for this, and I think you were right about it. I think that it's probably the right way to go about it, to talk about why guys didn't make it versus why guys at the bottom kind of did. Yeah. Right. And then we'll be able to especially because I had that 18 person group at the end of the day, it felt like it was the right place to kind of go.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of names that deserve to be discussed tonight. And I think the conversation as you really get to the bottom of this list is primary scores, like guys that can go out and get buckets versus role players and the value of that and how that projects moving forward. And again, team construct and opportunity and growth and those type of things. And so I think that's why tonight's conversation can be a little bit more interesting around those overall ideas of, I would say a lot of the guys we're going to talk about tonight, I don't know that they have superstar upside or power in regards to that. I don't know that they're ever going to have an opportunity to lead their team in scoring. And some of the guys we left off the list do. And I think that's where we'll get a lot of pushback for tonight's episode. But that's why I thought it was important to talk about the guys we left off, why, including the guys that made it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of trying to formulate my back end here. I think I had 50 or so players that I considered. So is there anything else we need to talk about criteria wise before we just kind of dive into some of the honorable mentions here?
No, I just want to reiterate, this is a projection. This is very different than if we were just ranking the best 24 players as it stands right now. I cannot emphasize that enough. This list would look vastly different because it was the first question I asked you. How are we ranking these? Are we ranking these guys on what we think is going to happen this season? It's not even that. It's not even a projection of just 24, 25. That's obviously part of it, but this is ultimately, just moving forward, who are going to be, the best players. And that's how we did this. So,
yeah, that is absolutely right. One other thing worth noting, though, there's only one player from the 2024 draft on our list. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I have another in the top 40, really. The 2024 draft just really did not end up coming into my thought process a whole lot as I was doing this. And it's largely because these guys, yes, there will certainly be all-stars from this draft class, but I felt like their ceilings and floors, outside of one guy that we'll talk about at the beginning of our 24 list, were so wide and vast that it was just really, really difficult to try and come up with a solution for.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down 2024 NBA draft in my honorable mention list. I just didn't rank any of them. So, the one we'll talk about tonight, I didn't rank, but it was we haven't even seen these yet. We saw them in summer league. It's the nature of the draft. I know, Cooper Flag will get brought up in the 2025 draft. I just didn't want to go there. Quite honestly, we haven't even seen these guys play this season. Of so much could change over the next 12 months with all of these guys. I just thought it was premature to even, they're worth mentioning, but I wasn't going to actually put them on the list when we have guys that we can have data of even one season, but many of these guys, we have 2, 3, 4 seasons of data and what they've done in the NBA. And so I'm valuing that, but yeah, I think it is telling that it would have been easy to put I would say if we would have done this last year, Vic would have been on the list. Scoot would have been on the list. Miller would have been on the list, and maybe Min would have been on. I don't know if Min would have been on the list last year or not. Yes.
So he would have been.
Yeah, I think it's pretty telling that we kind of barely considered even putting anybody from this class on it.
Yeah, we would have had 4 rookies on the list last year, and this year we have none. And I think that just kind of says everything that needs to be known about kind of where those players lie in the grand scheme of the NBA right now, and where they have to grow to in order to kind of become some of the best young players in the league. So players that I had outside of my top 40 to 45.
Okay.
Alex R, Zach Ricochet, Dyson Daniels, Walker Kessler, Shaedon Sharpe. Also Bilal Coulibaly, I believe, kind of fits into this mold as well. So Kessler is just like a question of ceiling for me. And like, frankly, is he definitely a top 15 starting center in the league? I think he probably will be at some point, but I need to see a little bit more given what our sample is of him over the course of his first 2 seasons. I think he probably would have had a shot to be near the bottom of the list after his rookie season, but then he kind of stagnated this year in a concerning way. Ricochet and Sarr, we kind of talked about in terms of rookies. Dyson Daniels, I love Dyson Daniels' defense. I just don't know enough about where the offense is going to settle in. And then Shaedon Sharpe missed this year. So Shaedon really only has like that last month of play during his rookie season that gives us a ton, I would say, of positive, this guy can definitely be like an all-star caliber, like difference maker in the NBA. I just needed a bigger sample size for Shaedon. Is there anyone else that like you were considerably kind of higher or like considerably lower on, maybe, that were kind of outside of your group here?
No, not right now. Like if I went to like Nebhart, Keldon Johnson, Kobe White, Deni Avdia, Cam Thomas, are those guys not even on that list for you, or they're a little bit higher?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have Cam on mine, but I'm not a Cam guy. We'll talk about Denny here as we get nearer to like the top end ish of this thing. Nembhard is probably right above this group for me.
Okay.
Nembhard's play in the playoffs, I think, was like really outstanding to the point where I really wonder about what he can be into the future. I do have some slight questions about what the upside is. I can squint and see a world where like he sneaks an all-star game if he like gets way better and continues to like grow and mature. He's a solid defender. We know that now he can shoot off the catch. He can play both on and off ball. I would just like to see him be like a little bit more dynamic with the ball, I think, to be able to reach like the bottom kind of grouping of this list. But yeah, like Nembhard was a guy that I considered pretty substantially, but ended up more in like the 40-ish range in like the bigger group of guys.
Yep. No, I think that's where I was as well before. Like we haven't quite got into the guys I really considered in my top 24 yet.
Yeah. Josh Giddey is another one that like ended up kind of just way off the bottom here. Jaime Jaquez was a guy that ended up like right around that 35, 36, 37 range for me. Tari Eason, another guy that ended up like right around that 35 to 37 range for me. Jaquez, I just would like to see it a little bit more at this point. I want to know what the upside is, given that he is still just a little bit older than everybody. Like he is not your typical patented rookie. He is already 23 years old, turns 24 years old in February. So the age is kind of working against him a little bit here. Tari Eason, obviously got injured this year. I just like want to see more offensive skill at the end of the day. It's kind of where I'm at. I think Tari is going to be like a real difference maker, energy guy, always incredibly productive and like makes an impact when he's on the court. I think I just want to know a little bit more about how that exactly translates to playoff play when he's going to have to knock down his open threes at a serious level. And he's going to have to continue to be able to like make decisions on the fly at a super high level as well.
Yeah, and I think with Tari, I mean, I don't disagree with anybody who's super high on Tari and his talent.
Totally.
Again, one of my things with this and Houston, and this is a compliment to Houston. I'll spoil it right here. We will talk about 7 Houston Rockets throughout the next 3 episodes of this. 7. And essentially our top 35 is what both of us had, 7 of them. So this is a compliment of where do the minutes come from? Like, there is opportunity as part of this conversation. If you're going to be a top 5 player on this list, you have to have the opportunity to be the best player on your own team, in my opinion, or close to it. And you have to be on a winning team, right? And so if you're going to be somewhere, like, I just wonder where the minutes come from for Tari in Houston. And maybe they eventually do. Maybe he beats guys out and he gets them. Maybe he eventually gets moved. I know Rockets fans hate hearing that, but it's not a Tari talent thing. It's seeing it a little bit more. And then also, how much opportunity does he have to really spread his wing? Did RJ Barrett end up in this, like, on your list
in the
at all?
Group even above this one.
Okay.
For me.
Okay.
A couple other guys here. Jeremy Sohan, just we haven't seen enough offensive play yet, but he is an outstanding defender every single time that I watch him play. Certainly not on the top 24 group by any stretch. Let's see. Cam Whitmore is in this group. Jaden Ivey is in this group for me.
So I had Cam and J.I. a little bit higher, but that's just that's probably a continuing to cling to my pre-draft thoughts on those guys. Like, I was a huge Cam Whitmore guy. And, the argument can be the same for him that I just made for Tari, though. Like, is he going to get the opportunities to really do what I think he can do? And then J.I., he didn't sniff the 24, of course, but I was very high on J.I. I think this is a huge year for J.I., and I think he's going to get the opportunity finally. I think we're going to see him in the role that he can at least be successful in, and now it comes down to whether or not he can be. I had both of those guys a little bit higher, but not much.
Okay. Next grouping here for me. Some smaller guards. Tyler Hero, Kobe White, Brandon Pajemski.
Yep.
Pods, it's a question of me for being able to create shots at a super high level, given his size. Unbelievable decision maker, great passer, great shooter as well. Has unbelievable touch when he gets the creases created for him. I really believe in him being able to make the right decisions and being able to finish plays at this point. I didn't love him on defense this year, despite what Kendrick Perkins told people. I thought that he kind of struggled with the size component substantially, even though he took some charges. I just worry about, is he more of like an awesome role player as opposed to being a potential driver of play, like a lot of the guys are potentially on this list. And what exactly is he a lead outside of just making decisions? I think he makes decisions at a very high level. I think he can shoot it at a not quite elite level, but a great level. I just kind of wanted to understand a little bit more about where that was going to settle in for him going into year 2. If he ended up near the bottom of the list, in the next 2 years, wouldn't blow my mind by any stretch of the imagination.
So real quick for me, I kind of listed these guys as primary scorer type guys and then role player type guys that didn't make the list. And he's probably third on my role player archetype of guys behind. And part of that is just size. The 2 of the guys that I have ahead of him both really shoot the ball, and they just have more length than him, which, just naturally allows more versatility, especially on the defensive end. So he wasn't really in my consideration for top 24, but I mean, he was right here in this range as well.
Kobe White was in this group as well. I would like to know a little bit more on if Kobe is more of a great 6th man as opposed to a great, starting caliber driver of offense. Kobe is a little bit older than most of these people. He actually graduates off the list in February. He's another one that is right next to the age cutoff here. And that kind of made me downgrade him just a little bit on something like this. Was obviously one of the most improved players in the NBA this season. That process started late last season as well. Averaged 19 points and 5 assists per game, shot 45% from the field, 38% from 3, 84% from the line. I still just feel like the decision making isn't quite as fast as I would like to see. And while he's gotten better on defense, I think that there is still just like a little bit of room for growth for him on that end, to where he would need to be able to make those steps in order to hit the bottom of the list for me.
Yeah, and like we've seen him get better, and obviously he blew up this past season. I mean, it was great. We talked about it last episode, though. What does his role fall into now with all of the guards they have there? Him and Josh Giddey could, end up being a really good thing, but does that, maybe he'll be fine playing off the ball, but we saw a major jump. We saw a little bit of a different role for him where he kind of got to be the guy. Like, if Levine is still there, how much does that take away from him, at least for a year or so? I would just like to see it happen for another year before I'm like, hey, 100%, I believe in this kid, this guy, not kid, and that he's going to be a 20-point a game guy for 5 years and, average 5 assists and do it on relatively decent efficiency for a smaller guard.
Okay, next is Tyler Hero. I ended up downgrading Hero a little bit because of the injury history. Like, he consistently misses games.
Yeah.
I would say he consistently misses somewhere between 15 to 25 games per season.
55, 54, 66, 67, 42. Yeah.
Yeah, and ended up missing half the season this year. Look, I think he can really score the basketball. Averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, nearly 5 assists per game this year. Shoots 40% from 3, just about. Was at 39.6 this year, 38% the year before, 39.9 in his third season where he won 6th man of the year. The other piece of it with Hero is the defense. I think he is actually like a fairly harmful defender in a way that a lot of the guys here aren't quite on that level.
Yeah, this is one where I messed up. Like, I'll just, like I say, I carry my own mistakes, my own receipts here. I had Hero at 24 on my list, and I think that was just flat out wrong. Not because, like, what I ended up falling into is I was debating between him and some other like volume scorers, like the same archetypes, and decided I would rather have him over them. I didn't take the injuries into account enough. And I think at the end of the day, like, I should have just taken the quote unquote role players. We'll talk about one tonight that I didn't have on my list that I should have. And thankfully you got him on the list. And there's also a couple others as well. So that was just a mistake. Also, we share a birthday. So like, I was just like, hey, this will be cool. Give me a chance to, he barely stays on the list though. I mean, he turns 25 on January 20th. So he was like Garland, where we're barely. So I think he's very much in the conversation we're having now. I think he is the guy, as I look back through my list as we've done things, where I'm like, I was overvaluing it. Even though I do think, like, just as an offensive scorer, creator, those things, he has shown a real ability to do that for multiple years, of course.
Before we get into like the guys that really, really ended up close for me, I don't think we've mentioned Cam Whitmore yet, have we?
Yeah. We talked about him.
Did we? Okay.
Cool. A
little
little bit, yeah.
So, yeah, Whitmore is like a super upside guy that I think people know that I think very, very highly of. I couldn't get him on the list ultimately because I want to see where the feel settles in. Like, his feel for the game got better this season, but is still pretty deficient, I would say, by NBA standards. But, elite level power, explosiveness athlete who can get to his spots. Also consistently made shots this year, averaged double figures for a long time as a teenager this season in the NBA. I just want to see more where the feel and the defense end up settling in. But, an interesting player that honestly, if you wanted to have him near the bottom of a top 24 player list, I wouldn't hate it. I just couldn't quite get there and ended up with some safer players a bit higher.
Yeah. I mean, he was very right there in my top 30. So.
Yep. Okay. Devin Vassell.
Yep.
Denny Avdia. Jaden McDaniels.
Yep.
Trey Murphy, I would say, is just like a tier worth talking about. All of those players were in my top 31 on this thing. Vassell was the lowest. I think I worry a little bit about what the upside is, just in terms of being able to consistently get rim pressure. It feels to me like a lot of his shots are quite difficult whenever I watch him. A lot of mid-range pull-ups, and then I want to see him grow just even more as a passer, more than anything. He has gotten better at that over the course of his career to this point, to the point that this season he averaged 4 assists per game. And then the season before he was at 3.6. But I think that there is still just like a little bit more room to grow in that regard. It felt like to me his assists came because he had the ball a lot, as opposed to him like really making super, super high level reads.
Yeah, this is same area for me with Devin Vassell. A lot of same thing. Like the thing, he'll have a lot of eyes on him. Like this is an opportunity thing. If all of a sudden he becomes the number 2 to Wembanyama moving forward, this is that's an opportunity for him to really grow, a team that's, on the rise and ideally going to get better. But he just barely missed it for me as well. He was right there, I think right at 29 or 30 on my list. So Denny was a little bit lower. I felt like I was a Denny guy, but I didn't quite have him in this top 30. So that's interesting. I thought maybe I always feel like I'm too high on Denny Avdia.
Yeah, to me, it's like his overall production on both ends of the court is the important thing for me. He is just awesome at being able to impact the game on defense with his length and with his feel, and being able to just kind of close off angles and close off different little using like little digs and like helping over from the weak side. He's just kind of always available and always around on defense, even if the playmaking numbers like don't stand out at like a crazy, crazy high level. 0.8 steals, 0.85 or 0.5 blocks per game, but he's just always around. It feels like he was the guy on defense for the Wizards where I was like, oh no, like this guy actually knows what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I felt like he was really valuable, and the shooting took a big leap this year. That's the big thing for me is, Denny averaged 15.7 rebounds and 4 assists per game as a 6'9" wing, which if you can find like jumbo 6'9" wings that can play defense and play offense, those guys are just really fucking hard to find.
Yep.
If the shooting is real with Denny, I think we're too low. I just want to see another year of whether or not the shooting is the real.
Denny also reminds me, because we've constantly talked about his contract. We did not consider contracts, rookies, any of that. Like important. Nowhere in this conversation do contracts come into play. Doesn't matter that Cade, Franz, and Scotty and Evan just got the rookie max, and other guys have already got it, like contracts do not matter whatsoever. They were not taken into account at all.
Important note, and I'm glad you said it. Okay. Next guy on that kind of group that we said was Jaden McDaniels, one of the best defenders in the NBA.
No question.
I didn't love the way that the offense kind of grew this year. I was hoping for a little bit more growth this season than what we saw. More than anything, it was just the decision making, like consistently, like, okay, he's going to drive and he's going to hit a kick out. He's going to attack and he's going to hit a dump off, right? Off of a closeout. It feels like it's just a little bit too easy to guard him by closing out heavy on the shot right now. And to me, when you're talking about a guy that is more than anything, like a role player right now, and, if we do this list again next year, won't be eligible for it next year because he's a 2000 birthday. I think I would like to just see a little bit more from him on offense in terms of the decision making, even if I adore the defense and think Jaden McDaniels is one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA point blank.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And he's been available. He's played at least 70 games the last 3 years. It really is the offense, it's everything. The defense is amazing. Even looking at the rebounding numbers, that's not something he does crazy. Now you have Gobert there and guys gobbling up boards. I know they play big, so there's not a whole lot left, but the assist number, a lot of the numbers went down from, 2 years ago to this season, including the 3-point percentage. He's a guy that at times teams would just say, hey, we're not going to guard you, and let's see if you can keep your confidence, throughout a playoffs or a game or whatever. So I think that was with me as well, as I want to see if the offense comes, like you talk about guys that can make us look stupid doing this. This is a guy I think can make us look stupid if the offense really hits, because it's going to be 5 years from now, people, what do you mean he wasn't top 24? He's a all NBA level defender that shoots 38% from 3 on volume. And he wasn't doing that whenever we made the rankings though. And I think that's the point here.
That's right. Okay. Trey Murphy's the last one. He was 26 or 27 for me.
23 for me. He made my list. He was the other guy that I had 2 guys on my list that didn't make our combined list. I already mentioned Hero, mistake. Murphy, for me wasn't a mistake. I'm happy having Murphy in my top 24.
I think Trey Murphy's a pretty interesting player to have on something like this because he is one of the best big shooters in the NBA at 6'9". He can really, really flame throw, can make them off of movement. Having big shooters like this is huge for any team that's trying to win games. The reason I ended up slightly lower on Trey is that I don't think he is a bad defender, but I think that the defense gets a little bit overrated from time to time to where I think he is I think he's like a fine defender. I don't think he is like a great defender in the NBA right now.
I agree with that. I think it's really easy when people talk about the Pelicans. Somehow he gets lumped in with Herb Jones. And it's like, no. This is much different on the defensive end. This isn't even close on the defensive end. And so I think that's a fair point. But he does have that length. He does have that size. This is another one, though, depending on what happens with BI and some of the roster decisions they make. Does he continue to not start? You know, like, is a guy top 24 if he's not even going to start on his team over the next 5 years? I think ultimately BI gets moved and he does move into the starting lineup, but I think that could be some pushback is, hey, what if I don't think New Orleans is going to re-sign BI long-term, but if they do, there may not even be a starting spot on his own team. And so I can understand that. I took it into account. Ultimately, though, I just think you said it, a guy at his size that shoots the way he does, his length, I just think that that's really, really impactful.
Okay. We have 3 guys left here. We'll save 2 of them for the end. RJ Barrett was, I believe, on mine, if I remember correctly. Or if he wasn't, he ended up 1 ahead of Jalen Green for me. So he was just slightly off of mine, if I remember correctly. Okay. Why RJ Barrett? I think that we've all kind of underrated what RJ has done to this point in his career. The fact that he's still eligible for something like this is crazy. He's been in the NBA now for, if I remember correctly, 5 or 6 years. But last season, he averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. But if you look at his time with the Raptors, those final 32 games, he averaged 21.8 points, shot 55% from the field, 39% from 3, and 63% from the foul line. He was awesome. He was consistently getting to his left hand, getting downhill, finishing at the basket, was kind of what the idealized ideal of him was supposed to be in New York, but just hadn't quite come to fruition yet. The other thing is, though, that like, even if you look at the time in New York, he was quite good after, those first 2 seasons where he was quite inefficient, right? So like the last 2 seasons that he was in New York, he averaged 19.8 points, 5.4 rebounds, 3 assists. Yes, he was inefficient as a shooter because the 3-pointer just like didn't fall. That's ultimately going to be what it is. Like if RJ ends up making threes at some point, he has a real chance to be an all-star. And I think people have way undervalued that potential. Now, do I think RJ is going to shoot it at a high enough level to become an all-star at some point? No. But I think the people that are ruling it out are probably off on that a little bit. Because the other piece of it with RJ is he has proven in the playoffs that he can actually be like a really tough on-ball physical defender as well, and can actually stick on a playoff court and bring some value. Like those games in the playoffs that he had in 2023, he had like an awesome stretch there. I think it was like from game 3 of the first round against Cleveland on through to like everything but the last game against Miami. So he had 8 games in a row there. He averaged 22.5 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 50, 38, 72, and played like really high level defense. I think we underrate a little bit what RJ Barrett has done. Also, he looked great this summer playing for the Canadian national team in the FIBA tournament at the Olympics. I very much considered RJ Barrett, and I wonder if the rest of the league is kind of undervaluing where he could get to at some point.
Yeah, so I did not have him in kind of that list of guys that was knocking on the door for my top 24. Listening to you and looking at the numbers, maybe I should have considered like I will hear
like to me, I would just much rather have him than Tyler Hero because I think he can defend.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like I said, and that was, I can see the argument. I guess is what I'm saying now is I think I'm one of those that maybe undervalued. Like, I don't think I gave him his due credit as I was doing my research and thinking through things and looking up numbers and stuff like that. Like, I will own that one for sure. So I think mentioning him here, and this is why I wanted to do this, because if we just start off with number 24 and move forward, then we don't even talk about him, let alone any of these other guys. And he, deserved this kind of, love from us on the pod, specifically from you. So yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Okay. The last two guys are Rockets. And then number 24 is also a Rocket.
Okay. So let me ask this. Did you have Gigi even on your radar?
On the radar, but I just need to see way more. Okay. Like I just would like to know what that looks like in a winning situation. I think it's completely reasonable to bring him up. I can't have him on the list by any stretch. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's reasonable to bring up Gigi.
Okay. I was just curious. Like, I knew he did some things this year that were impressive and people had to take note of. Again, I did not consider him in this realm, but I at least had his name typed out on the sheet.
Yeah. Gigi is the name I have on my sheet as well. I just missed it when I was going through it. But decided ultimately, like, I just need to see so much more of just like of him being like a positive player on a winning team. Sure. Before we like really strongly consider it. There is a chance that like he should be on this list. Like, and he might grow into something for Memphis that is like way beyond what we think. I just want to see a little bit more. The last two guys that did not make the top 24. I had Jalen Green, I think 26 or 27 or so. And I had Jabari Smith on my list.
Yep.
Jabari just missed. Let's talk about Jalen Green first.
Okay.
Jalen Green really struggled at times through the first 4 months of this year to consistently be in Houston's closing five. In part because of the defense and in part because of the inefficiency as an off-ball player. In March, he was unfucking believable.
We did a whole breakdown. We did a whole
breakdown.
Go watch it because we just swooned over everything. And it wasn't just the scoring, Sam. If you remember, like, we were giving him love for other aspects of his game as well.
27.7 points, 6.3 rebounds, 4 assists in the month of March in 15 games. Now, the thing that we brought up during that time, Houston's schedule was a calamity during that time. It was not a difficult run of games that Jalen Green had to play. But in a moment without Alperen Şengün, who is certainly on this list, and we will talk about him later, not today, into the future.
Not tonight.
But in games without him, Jalen Green was really, really important and figured out ways to make an impact. Now, in April, when they needed him and the schedule really started to pick up and got more difficult, Jalen Green averaged 17 points, 4.4 assists, and shot 38% from the field and 29% from three as Houston was trying to make like a real final playoff push. That felt a little bit concerning to me, given what the worries are with Jalen Green. I completely understand if you buy the upside with Jalen Green as a shot creator and you buy him as a scorer and you buy him as somebody who can be like a 28 point per game scorer that is valuable. I just can't get there with him, unfortunately, to put him on this list in terms of the consistency, if only because we've seen a lot of these games now, and he hasn't really made growth yet. He's only at 6.7 wins, according to Dunks3s.com, over the course of the last 2 years combined. If you look at somebody like Jalen Suggs, for instance, Jalen Suggs was at 8.2 this season alone, because of the defense, because he's efficient, because he just consistently does the right thing on the court and creates value, even if he's not necessarily the primary option on the court. I worry that Jalen has to be the primary option and isn't quite good enough at being the primary option, which makes him more of a sixth man. And he might be an awesome sixth man, but like that doesn't belong on the list either necessarily. So,
well, and the one thing I want to say too is like, I feel like we say this with a lot of guys, like, hey, if they can't be the primary guy, then they can just go be a sixth man. That's not an easy thing to do. I don't think that's easily acceptable by these guys all the time, or just, I think we'd see more guys do it. But yeah, listen, I had Jalen Green right there. And, the one that I messed up, like I said, I had a hero on, shouldn't have. The one I should have had on is the guy we're going to talk about next. I'm comfortable not having Jalen Green on the list for all the reasons you said. I mean, that stretch in March was unbelievable. But if you look at the stretch the month before it in February, and then in April, the 3-point percentage was below 30%. And so ultimately you have to look at the bigger sample sizes, because that gives us what we want to see. And for his career at this point, on 1,600 3-point attempts, he's at 34%. Now, as you mentioned before the show, that's on a really tough, shot diet, but that's also him having to be willing to move off the ball and play that role and take the easier shots, and then do all the other things that go with that role in terms of playing defense and rebounding and all of that. And that's what we gave love for him in those, that breakdown in March, is we thought he was doing some of that stuff. So maybe he comes back, the efficiency rises, he does all those other things. I'm just not comfortable completely buying it to put him ahead of some of these. His upside is undoubtedly higher than probably every other name we're going to say tonight. But I just I'm not comfortable I'm not buying into that as much as I am what I think these guys can be, even if the ceiling is a touch lower for some of these names.
Yeah, I'm not totally convinced his ceiling is higher than everybody we're going to talk about, but we'll talk about that in a minute here. The last guy that we need to mention is Jabari Smith Jr.
Yeah.
So that means 7 Rockets are in the top 35 for us, basically. We're top 40-ish, let's say. They have 7 of the top 40 players 24 and under in the league. That is an insane number. This team in this front office has done an unbelievable job.
Only one other team has 3 players on our list, and 3 teams have 2. And that's the top 24. I'm sure if we go to the 35, it's a little bit more, but it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's a really, really insane group of talent that they've accumulated. Jabari Smith, why no Jabari Smith here, is like a very fair, open question. I liked the growth that Jabari made on defense this year. I thought he was a solid defender this year. I did not think he was like all, I saw some people like giving him potential, like all defense love. I didn't think he was anywhere near that. I thought he was like a solid defender who knew where he needed to be positionally. I would like to see him just get a little bit more fluid through his hips as much as anything. I think that's going to be where like the next growth comes for him, is just kind of getting through that like extension, like through his hips, and being able to bend and turn at a higher level. The shooting is serious. The shooting took an enormous jump this year. And you and I have always bought into the
100%
with Jabari. Yeah. Like there's no reason to think that he is not going to be, a real shooter. He made 36% from 3 this season, 81% from the line, and he is a 6'11" real shooter. Doesn't have enough length really to play the center position consistently though. So he is kind of a position locked 4 that is switchable. I would say like 3 and 4s. I don't love him on like guards at this point right now. I don't know if he's quite quick enough to manage those guys consistently. That could improve, because here's the other piece of it. Jabari Smith just turned 21 years old this summer. He is still extremely young. I am a believer in him eventually figuring this out. If we do a list like this again next year, I think I would bet Jabari Smith is on it, frankly. But I do need to see a little bit more. Like, he's just not a great shot creator, doesn't quite have the handle yet to be able to get to those spots consistently. A lot of difficult mid-range shots, and otherwise just like shots off the catch or cuts to the basket, where again, like as a finisher, he's like a solid finisher, but not an amazing finisher. Still, all of the versatile things that we just brought up, right? Scorer, pretty good defender in help situations, pretty good on-ball defender, real shooter that we think is going to be like a 40% three-point shooter off the catch at some point. It's 6'11". That's like an incredibly valuable player. I just needed it to be like a little bit more dynamic, I think is where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, we can come back a year from now, and if we see this real, I think the defender I thought he was going to be coming out of college, if he's that, which isn't even all NBA level, but it's like really impactful, like low man blocks, really switchable, just like that prototypical 4-man archetype. And I love that archetype. That's what I love Jabari coming out of Auburn. And then just really knocking the shot continue to grow. So, it went from 41% to 45% from the field, 31% to 36% from three. Great. That's a great jump. I would like to see it go a little bit more. I heard someone saying the other day, like, oh, well, if he, figures out the shot creation. I was like, we were talking about the shot creation in college though, as well, Sam. Like this was a concern going back to even that. And so I'm not sure I buy that he's ever going to be his own shot creator. He made a ton of really tough shots. If you go back and watch the film at Auburn, I remember just being wowed by some of the shots he made, but it wasn't because he was finding a way to make easy ones or create easy ones. So make those shots. But I think it really comes defensively. If he becomes like a real high level defender, I think that's where he really proves us wrong in terms of not quite having him on this list, like it being that close.
I think that's right. Okay. Are you ready to get started here?
Let's do it.
Before we get started, we've got to hear from the sponsors over at Mando. Look, I just went away to the Yarra Valley to go do a little wine trip with my wife and some of her family. And packing's always a nightmare for these things. You never know what to pack. Sometimes you bring too much. Sometimes you don't bring enough. Those 3-day kind of trips, they're always kind of funky in terms of, do I bring a big suitcase? Do I bring a little suitcase? Look, it's a struggle. But the biggest struggle with it all is bringing hygiene products, figuring out, what do I bring? What do I not bring? The easiest solution for all of this is Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar. This 5-ounce bar is a game changer. It works as a shampoo, face wash, body wash, or deodorant. And if you need a shaving lather, it's perfect for that too, technically making it a 5-in-1 product. It's clinically proven to control odor for 24 hours. Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar is formulated with a gentle alpha hydroxy acid that stops odor at the source. Regular soap just can't compete because its pH is too high. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not totally sure about alpha hydroxy acids and pH levels, but trust me, this stuff just works. A doctor developed it. You know it's legit. The bar simplified my hygiene routine and was the only thing I really needed to pack. Think of all the room I had in my suitcase for an extra pair of shoes, a tuxedo, snacks, things like that. The 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar comes in 3 cologne quality scents: Mount Fuji, Bourbon Leather, and Pro Sport. I used the Bourbon Leather, and guess what? I've got a special offer for you. New customers are going to get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack with code GAMETHEORY at checkout. That code is GAMETHEORY at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. It's safe to use anywhere on your body. Created by doctors, it's powerful enough for the toughest odor to get sent away, but it's gentle enough for every crevice. Plus, it's aluminum-free, baking soda-free, cruelty-free, dye-free, and vegan. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. So use that code GAMETHEORY at shopmando.com to get $5 off your starter pack. Simplify your travel and stay fresh with Mando. Okay. Let's do it. It's time to get into all of the 24. Number 24, Reed Sheppard of the Houston Rockets. The way that Bryce and I did the final 4 names on our list, we agreed on the top. We had 20 guys on the 24 lists that we had, the 24 person list that we had. So I got to pick 2 and Bryce got to pick 2. I picked Reed as one of my 2. I understand that this is going to be controversial. This might look stupid in a year. It might look stupid next week for all I know. I don't know. But Reed Sheppard, to me, is everything that the NBA is currently looking for in terms of passing, playmaking, and elite level shooting. Think about the fact that Reed Sheppard is probably the best shooting prospect to enter the NBA since Steph, right? The guy made 52.1% from 3 this season. He is an awesome, awesome, awesome shooter off the catch, off the dribble. At Summer League, he showcased that he was way farther ahead as a point guard, as a distributor, and in ball screens than what anybody expected. His ability to get to his spot in the mid-range and knock down pull-up jumpers was incredible. And he made a number of super high-level cross-corner kick-out passes, dump-off passes, wrap-around passes. He was extremely, extremely impressive at Summer League. Everything that you hoped for that could translate looked like it was translating. The thing with Reed is that I just said that this might end up being too high for Reed. We might end up looking stupid by the end of his rookie year. Bryce, this also might look way too low for Reed by the end of his rookie year, because if he's able to come in and be like a dynamic overall offensive player who is a 50% three-point shooter, let's even say 45% three-point shooter, which is 7% lower than what he shot last year, which is a number of fewer made threes, is able to make passes at the level we saw. Feel for the game, shooting, creativity, dynamism, like all this stuff is just kind of here for Reed, even if he only is 6'2", right? And that's the big concern, is just the size, right? So this was my opinion. So I'll ask you, where was Reed on your list? I think you were way lower than I was personally. But this was my choice. Anybody that's looking to blame someone, blame me. This is me.
or give you credit if that's the way it plays out. So just to clarify, we each made our own list of 24. Of our list of 24, 20 guys were the same on both of our lists. And then of the 8 or whatever that were left, Sam picked 2, I picked 2. I'm okay with this. I just was not willing to put any 2024 draft guys just in general. Like I know we saw Summer League. We haven't seen them play in the NBA. So I just stayed away from it in general. I don't know. So I don't know where I would have had Reed if I would have even considered this class. One thing I will say that I adamantly agree with you on is, if he is able to be the on-ball guy that we saw in Summer League, if he's able to translate into that NBA, and it doesn't even have to be this year, but if he's able to do that eventually, then we are going to look silly for not having him higher. Because that was always my thing about Reed's ceiling, was what was he able to do on ball? Was he this creative passer, operate ball screens, get to his spots? The most impressive thing at Summer League was what he did right there, which was the mid-range jumper. The mid-range jumper, I thought, really, really stood out, along with some of the passes. I think defensively, he's going to have to do, if you're watching on YouTube, what he did right there, where he dug at the ball and created a turnover that way. I still have some concerns just holding up physically, but if he can be that on-ball guy, some of those things are limited in terms of my concerns with those.
3.2 stocks per game at Kentucky this season was absolutely ridiculous in terms of being able to get his hands on the ball, make plays defensively. On the ball, on defense, I think he's a real issue a lot of the time. And also off the ball at times.
He's
on
very
defense.
ball watchy.
He gets a little bit like space cadet-y, trying to watch the ball, and like will lose track of his man a little bit too often. I still think that the instincts are there for such a young player to where it's going to be fine eventually, and that he'll settle into just kind of knowing how to best utilize his skill set and his hands offensively. He has like the fastest hands and like the best hand-eye coordination I think I've seen in a prospect in a long time. I am a big believer in Reed Sheppard just being like a real dude. At the end of the day, you look at the guys who have hit, like really, really hit and broken beyond what people thought their perceived ceiling was coming into the NBA. Jalen Brunson, it's like unbelievable footwork, unbelievable touch, being able to drive. And Jalen's like a totally different dude because he's built like a Mack truck, right? And like, his shoulders, he bounces off of guys and things like that. But it's skill, it's touch, and it's feel for the game. You talk to people at Villanova about Jalen Brunson, they'll tell you like one of the smartest players that they've ever had around their program, just point blank. Austin Reeves, skill, feel for the game, touch, right? Tyrese Maxey, unbelievable speed for sure, but skill, feel for the game, touch. All these dudes that went, 23 and lower, and, Desmond Bane goes 30th and ends up providing way more value because of that ability to fire from three. Having guys like this who can just fire from three all the time, they always have this intense value on the court to me. I mean, if he ends up hitting, like Tyrese Halliburton is another example of a guy like this, where it's super skill, super feel for the game, unbelievable touch. I don't know. I think Reed is just exceptionally dynamic at the end of the day. And I just like really, really believe in Reed Sheppard at a level maybe beyond what I should.
No, and we talked about this before he got drafted. Every time we'd mock him to the Rockets, once the Rockets took him, we also talked about how there's so much talent, right? So it's, maybe we don't see this play out in year one because of all that talent and Fred VanVleet's still there and all of that. I think he's in a good situation defensively with some of the other defenders they have on that team, specifically Amin Thompson, who we will talk about at some point moving forward. And I think it allows him not to have to guard the primary offensive player on the other end. He can play a little bit of a roamer role where I do think he could, yes, get ball watchy, but also jump passing lanes. I don't think he'll block the number of jump shots he blocked in college, but those will become really, really good contests on perimeter jump shots from Reed Sheppard, digging in off the ball, all of those things. Just kind of the playmaking he can do on the defensive end, I think will really, really show up. So I'm fine with it, to be honest. Like, I'm fine with it. I just wasn't comfortable going there with anybody in this draft class.
Yeah, I get it. Like, this draft was kind of a mess. Next year is going to be different. I'm sure Cooper Flagg will end up exceptionally high on a list like this that we do next year, right? Cooper is unbelievable and is something that we haven't seen in terms of a two-way player. It was like a forward in a while. Bigs are a little bit of a different ball game, but in terms of being able to make plays at that level as a forward, I think it's a little bit different. Yeah, Reed's the guy right now that I believe in from that draft at the end of the day.
Yep.
Okay. Number 24. Number 23, I'm sorry. Jonathan Kuminga. So this was a Bryce Simon pick.
Yep.
I will give you the floor on Kuminga because this was a good amount higher than where I had him.
Where did you have Kuminga?
Somewhere in the 30s.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you weren't even in here at all.
No, yeah, I was lower on Kuminga than that.
Yeah, like I've been high on Kuminga since last offseason. I think whenever we did the Warriors, I don't know if we did breakout things or X factors or something like that. I thought he was the guy for the Warriors, and I thought he made major strides in general with his scoring in terms of even cutting off the ball, just his confidence, his movement, all of those different type of things. He obviously did not shoot the ball well from three. That's going to be a huge part of this. He'll have to figure that out. But I thought he made that jump finally. And then the other thing with Kuminga, and I've talked about this multiple times now, is just the opportunity that I think he'll have. I think he has an opportunity to be the second option on the Warriors offensively for a good stretch of time throughout the season. I think he needs to be that. perhaps I don't know what's going to happen post Steph Curry, but I think I'm obviously higher on Kuminga than you are, but I'm also high on the opportunity he's going to have with the Warriors. So I had him right here at the back end of my top 24 just because of that. I also think just the athleticism and the size, there's the opportunity to be a real two-way player. I'm not saying he's there yet, but there's an opportunity to take matchups. I was looking through my notes as I was preparing for this, and it's like, oh, in this Rockets game, he took the Jalen Green matchup, and then there was a Celtics game, and he was taking the Jason Tatum matchup, and got a huge steal in overtime of that game. So I think there's potential for a real two-way wing forward. And if the offense continues to be more confident and he starts to make shots, I just think he can be a real two-way force at some point during all of this. There you see one of those, those cuts off the ball.
Yeah. I mean, like everything that we're seeing on the screen, right? Like it's just all power athleticism and like dynamic body control. And like the thing that he does really, really well is he knows how to navigate little tight creases around the basket and in the paint, and like using jump stops and using his ability to kind of turn and flip his hips to be able to create separation and be able to get all the way to the rim and extend and finish. He's an awesome, awesome finisher around the rim. I always worry about how scalable these guys are to the playoffs on some level.
Sure.
I think he'll defend at a real clip, right? I think he will certainly or defend like on the ball, at least at a real clip, and be switchable and be tough. I just don't know like if he's going to be enough of a shot creator for himself, because like, for instance, everything that we saw in, the clips that we just saw come up on the screen, right? It's something getting created for him, an advantage, an odd man situation getting created for him. I don't think that Kuminga really creates those advantages himself, maybe is the way to put it. And that's what kind of frustrates me about watching him a lot of the time. And on top of it, also just can't shoot pull-ups, right? Like in any way, shape, or form. Like he absolutely is not a guy that's going to make pull-up jumpers. I don't really even trust him to make like catch and shoot jumpers at this point. But even with that, he is still one of 3 players, 21 years of age or younger last season, to average 16 points per game and shoot 50% from the field. Like the production is pretty real, even playing on a team where they needed scoring. Like by the end of the season, Kuminga was like kind of inching up the scouting report in terms of guys that you had to stop if you were dealing with the Golden State Warriors. So I'll kind of ask you this now. Is this a situation where you buy into the shooting in a way, or like, are you buying into the passing? Because that's something that we haven't seen any of. Like, I don't see the passing like in any way, shape, or form. So where do you see the growth come from to get to the level where he is making a leap like this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think corner threes for one is one thing I'll take note of. He shot 42% last season on corner threes. He shot 44% this season on corner threes. So there has to be a little bit of something with that. The free throw percentage got better. I just think he looked more confident and he took on a lot more usage. So I do think, the overall efficiency not being crazy. I mean, from the field, I guess it still was. He was still 53% from the field. So the 3-point percentage dipped. And so that means he just wasn't making his ones above the break, top of the key, probably off the dribble, like you're talking about. I wonder if he can be one of these wing slasher, like you mentioned, the power, explosive scores that's getting you 20 a night, and then also being a really good defender. And so that's where I think this is just my belief in Kuminga. Like he has, for whatever reason, has become one of those guys I just kind of believe in. I think he's going to be a good player. He doesn't even fit in the mold of every other player we're going to talk about tonight. So like, that's where I'm going to contradict myself, because the next guy we talk about is kind of completely different than Kuminga. And a couple of the other ones are, because I think they're like true role players that just fit a role exceptionally well. A lot of these other guys, I don't know that that's necessarily Kuminga. I just can't quit him. I just think he's a very good player. I think it's been untapped. We saw a little bit of it last year. I think we could see I'm betting on another jump from him this year with some more opportunity with Golden State, because I think they're going to have to use him with that team.
Yeah, like it is a little bit interesting to me that the advanced numbers actually like him a decent amount. Like his 5.2 estimated wins last year per dunksandthrees.com, right? Like that to me is the best, like, EPM is the best all-in-one metric, and then estimating wins off of that is kind of the easiest way to like try and gauge value if you're trying to utilize an all-in-one metric. Obviously no, excuse for not watching tape. Tape is the most important thing. And I think I've kind of enumerated all of my concerns with Kuminga on some level in that regard. But like Jonathan Kuminga was worth 5.2 wins last season. That's more than RJ Barrett. That's more than Jalen Green. That's more than Jabari Smith. Like he actually was like quite valuable comparatively to what some of these other guys that like just missed our list were worth. So to me, when I look at it, I thought it was like a completely insane pick at first, whenever you said you wanted Kuminga. And I was like, I looked deeper into it. I did a little bit more and I was like, okay, I think I see it at least. Still wouldn't be on my list, but like I see the vision at the very least to where you can get there. Like I would have had I frankly would have had all of RJ Barrett, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Jaden McDaniels, Trey Murphy, and like Denny and Devin Vassell over him. But I think his ceiling is higher than all those guys if it breaks.
I will also say Kuminga only played 26 minutes. So even when you're just looking at raw numbers for him, he's still, like we're a couple guys we're about to talk about both average over 33 minutes a night. And so I don't know, maybe that's my thing. Like him and Moses Moody, I guess, like I'm not trying to blame Steve Kerr. It's just like those are two guys who I just can't help but say they're better than this. And when Kuminga finally got his chance this last year, I thought he played pretty well. And again, I went back, looked through my notes. There was some defensive stuff. You talked about the on-ball potential, the versatility that can come with the on-ball. I can see the worry of, okay, maybe this is all he ends up being, right? Because if this is all he ends up being and what you have on the screen right now, then yeah, this is wrong. Like it doesn't warrant a top 24 player. I get that. So is there another jump, or was that the only jump? I think that's a fair question. I just kind of buy into him in this role of this just power slashing wing, moves off the ball, cuts, finishes around the rim, and then provides real, value on the defensive end as well.
That is actually an underrated thing that I think happened last year. He never stopped moving last year. I thought his second year, even particularly, he was still learning kind of how to move off the ball. This year, I think he kind of figured out the cutting aspect off the ball, how to make himself like a really dangerous player offensively when he didn't have the ball in his hands. So to me, that is a really, really good point and something worth arguing and considering with Kuminga.
Yep.
Okay. Number 22 is another Bryce Simon player, Dereck Lively II. This is another one where I looked at it initially and I was like, oh, like, I don't know if he has enough ceiling for this to quite warrant him being on a list like this. And this is one where I actually talked to a few people around the league and they were like, no, like Derek's going to be an absolute stud in that system. And I think that that's the guy you were getting at earlier when you said that you really like the idea of him being with Luka for the next 5 years, probably at least, in being able to make plays off of that.
Yeah, I mean, I will be 100% honest here. If Dereck Lively wasn't on the Mavs with Luka, I don't think he would be on this list. But I don't think he could be in a better situation to really highlight what he does well, which is catch the lobs. And then also when Luka gets doubled, him being a good passer. And I think he'll continue to get better because he was a rookie trying to do this last year, reading the floor out of a short roll when Luka gets doubled. I just could see that being super valuable. We can talk about the 3-point percentage, or the 3-point potential to shoot threes. I know he made a corner one in the playoffs. I don't want to buy into that. I've talked about this and I get frustrated when people do that stuff too much, like that's where this would all of a sudden look really smart, is if he does start to shoot. Like it ends up being too low if Dereck Lively starts shooting threes, to be quite honest. I just thought he was really good. He was an important piece on a team that made a playoff run. I think there's a lot of value in that. And this really came down to just kind of a situation, roster, role, archetype, and what he does best that team needs. And it's going to continue to be highlighted. And if that team continues to be good for the next few years, I think he's a name we talk about quite a bit, along with the defense, obviously, as well. So, yeah, if we were just ranking talent, I don't think he'd be here, right? Like he wouldn't be, but like when you factor in just like what he does and just being a star in his role, it kind of made sense to me.
Yeah. So let's start here. One of the best play finishers in the NBA last season, point blank, had a true shooting that was like 26 or 23% above league average, which is a crazy, crazy number. Shot 75% from the field. And a lot of these like catch and finishes that he has, a lot of them are quite easy. Like it's literally just catch and dunk, like catch, load up, dunk. But he does short roll at times, right? Like he does actually dribble and put the ball on the deck and then finish that way. He's not just a guy who ends up, catching at the basket 2 feet away from the rim and finishing. What I think is going to be interesting to track with him in terms of being worthy of this or not, 2 places. First, where does the passing kind of grow to? We saw a lot of really high level flashes as a passer over the course of this past season, right? Where he would short roll and they would kind of start to collapse onto him because they realized how good of a play finisher he is. That's where his counter is going to be really, really important, especially playing with Luka, where teams really like to put 2 on the ball against Luka to try and get the ball out of his hands.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
The second piece of it with Lively, how good of a defender can he be? So one of the things that I loved about him and why I had him at number 8, I think number 9, wherever I had him ranked pre-draft, despite the fact that he was like a relatively limited center. And I don't buy the shot long-term at all. Like, I don't think he's really ever going to shoot. I really love how versatile he is as a overall defender, as a big. I think that you can play a lot of different ball screen coverages with him, especially as he gets older and continues to get smarter and get better use of his angles, right? Like I thought that by the end of his season at Duke, even you could switch him onto guards. You could blitz guards with him and he could recover back. Certainly can play drop, as we saw throughout the course of this year. He's an awesome drop defender. I think that this isn't a crazy ranking. I think this is actually probably a correct ranking.
So
by you, the more I think about it.
52%, 3 to 10 feet, and there was 23% of his shot diet. So it wasn't nothing, right? Most of his shots come right at the rim where he was 83%, but like there's a little bit of touch there. So if he's going to short roll, he's got to be able to hit the floater and stuff at times as well. I think the number that scares me the most, Sam, is actually the minutes per game. You can't play 20 minutes per game and be on this list. And so was it just a rookie thing? Or, is it always going to be a timeshare with him and Daniel Gafford? And if it is, then even if he's extremely high level and efficient in those minutes, that's just not enough minutes to warrant what I've put here. Like he's got to eventually be a 28 to 30 minute a night center, especially in playoffs. Like that's what he has to be.
Yeah.
And so like, do you think the minutes start to swing more his direction?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not as worried about the minute load as I am. The other thing he does super well, you can watch it on the clips while we're kind of breaking it down, is he's really good at just kind of moving around the basket. He doesn't stop moving. He doesn't stop trying to open himself up for little dump off passes or little kickouts, right? Like he's always constantly trying to figure out, okay, my defender turned this way or went to help that way. I need to angle my body this way to open myself up to where I have the biggest catch radius and target available for my guard to hit me right in the chest so I can go up and dunk immediately, right? Really, really good as an offensive rebounder as well. I think that's one thing that we haven't really mentioned yet.
Sure.
Lively can really, really go and crash that offensive glass at a super high level. He's just frankly got a chance to be the best play finisher in the NBA among bigs. He shot like 75% from the field the season,
And
right? And that's a huge value if you also add in versatile defense and super high level rim protection.
And you're playing with the best lob thrower in the NBA. Like that's my other thing. Like I want to emphasize that. Like if people disagree, that's fine. I just want to make sure like I took roster construction opportunities, those and if you're playing with one of the best players in the world for the next 5 years who perfectly complements what you do best, that's going to help you be a better, more efficient, more valuable player moving forward. And so that was a huge part of the equation. If he was on the whoever that didn't have a point guard that couldn't break down the defense and throw lobs, he wouldn't have made my list. I just think he's in a great situation, and what he does, where I'm still on role players on this ranking. I want to emphasize that as well. I think all of these guys we're talking about right now are kind of role players, not face of your franchise, number one, number two options. And that's why I just kind of valued him as a role player for his team.
I'm realizing that I didn't update the scouting notes on the little thing that I did on the YouTube graphic, and that's annoying me. So I'm not
I read, I only read the bottom line, needs to become better shooter pull-up threat. I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. That's not true.
That's not true.
That was for Kuminga. Yep.
Definitely not true. Yeah, that was an oopsie on my part. Okay. Number 21, Jalen Johnson from the Atlanta Hawks. This was my pick. It is exceptionally hard. I just want to start up front here. It is exceptionally hard to find 6'9" elite level athletes like Jalen Johnson who also combine it with elite level body control and with elite level kind of explosiveness out in transition, and who can also combine that with real passing and playmaking vision. That is an unbelievable combination of things that make you a really high level player. Jalen Johnson last year averaged 16 points, 8.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.8 blocks. So was it 2 stocks per game? He was one of 8 players in the league to average 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game while shooting 50% from the field. That is a crazy, crazy high bar to clear. And he just cleared it, right? Like, we're not talking about a guy that is, sailing above it, because a lot of the guys that do this end up kind of sailing above those marks, right? Nikola Jokic sails above these marks on some level. But it's hard to find guys that are this elite in transition who can really go and create transition opportunities in the way that he does. I think Jalen Johnson's ceiling is remarkably high based off of what we've seen so far. I think he has legitimate all-star ceiling. The big question is going to be the shooting, and if the shooting can get to any real level that allows him to hit that ceiling.
So I'm all in on the passing. I think he's an awesome passer, rebounded the heck out of the ball this year, which is really impressive. Almost 9 rebounds a game is really big time stuff. You mentioned, 50% from the field overall. Obviously the shooting. How impactful is the defense? Because as I look through my notes, it was like, okay, one game, has, maybe can be good defensively. And then another game, not doing a lot of things. Yeah. Giving up back doors, miss some box outs. Like, how important is that to your ranking here? And where do you think his defense is at?
Yeah, I think he's a fine defender. I don't think he is a great defender at this point. I think he shows capabilities of being a very high level defender if things click into place. That's kind of what the hope is, right? Is that he can eventually be the kind of defender that takes on tough big wing assignments, right?
Yep.
That's what you're really hoping for. But man, to me, it's all about the offense. He's probably going to be a 20.9 rebound, 5 assists per game guy. And he's going to be able to create shots kind of on mismatches like we're seeing on the video here against Jamal Murray. He's going to be able to spin back and get into really difficult situations, get into really awesome, it's by difficult situations, I mean, it's difficult to create the shots that he's going to be capable of creating. I think he's somebody that I actually wonder whether or not he's going to be able to bend defenses. Like, I think he probably will be able to by the time that he is a little bit older and continues to grow as a ball handler and hopefully grows a little bit as a shooter. Some of the numbers like aren't terrible at least, but yeah, I think Jalen Johnson has a chance to be just like a total monster out in transition. In addition to hopefully being able to do a lot of the things that like Jonathan Kuminga does in transition, which we already see him do. And off of cuts and everything. I just think that Jalen's just way more impactful. I think Jalen's just way more impactful with the ball in his hands at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question there, right? Like, if we wanted to compare those two guys, what Kuminga, would you give Kuminga off the ball a little bit more? Cutting, play finishing, those type of things, just at the rim?
In the half court, yes.
Okay.
In the full court, no. I think Jalen is a more dynamic player because Jalen's also an elite level defensive rebounder and is able to create those plays at a much more substantial clip than what JK can. Cause I think that I think JK is a little bit more reliant on the others around him as opposed to Jalen, who can kind of just make those things happen on his own.
So there's no question that Jalen is better with the ball in his hands and a better passer, right? I would assume you much by Jalen Johnson's jump shooting projections than Kuminga's.
I do. I do buy Jalen as a jump shooter more. Obviously hit 36 from 3 this year. I don't know that he's that necessarily. I think that was a significant leap from anything we'd seen from him from any level. Made 73% of his free throws. I think there is some touch there, but like to me, it's really just about like dynamic athletic. I actually like Jalen's athleticism a little bit more than Kuminga's, for instance, because I think that his body control and his fluidity with
he's much more fluid than Kuminga. Kuminga's that explosive.
Yeah, I think he's more dynamic.
Okay. No, I was just it was comparing them a little bit, and then I was defensively as well. So, but
defensively, it's interesting. Like I think Jalen's like a real playmaker on defense. Like he has moments where like he's getting into passing lanes. He reads the court super well. Like the feel for the game when he was coming up, like in, Milwaukee, I guess. And then he transferred down to Florida for a minute, then went back up to Milwaukee. Like the feel for the game, nobody ever questioned that. Like he was always a guy that had super, super high level ability to see the court, right? It was just more, how would it all kind of settle for him at the end of the day? And, he had some things come up at Duke. He ended up like kind of leaving. I don't even remember if he left the Duke team or whatever it was, like didn't play a whole lot his freshman season at the end of the day. But the way that he ends up like kind of finding those creases and driving lanes, I think he's just like a super, super high level player. Again, though, needs to really improves the shooter and pull up threat. I think that he's a little bit further along than Kuminga is at this point, but like the real difference between the two, though, that we haven't brought up yet when comparing them is the passing.
Yeah,
the passing is really, really like a significant differentiator. Jalen Johnson can see the court and like really make high level plays. And he's like, okay on the ball at times. I think he's like space cadet off the ball a little bit on defense, but like to me, it's the passing and playmaking that makes him like this guy has like all-star ceiling if things break right.
Sure.
Like he goes ahead of Ricochet to me, who they just took at 1 in the Hawks pecking order.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Next up, number 20, Keegan Murray from the Sacramento Kings. 6'8", 215 pounds. He also just barely makes the age cutoff, despite this only being his 3rd season coming up in the NBA. 15 points per game, took a nice little jump this year. Always has been a super high level shooter over the course of really his last 3 years, last year at Iowa and first year in the NBA, second year in the NBA. Makes them off of movement at a significant level. I thought he was awesome this past season, was worth 8.4 wins, according to dunksandthrees.com. using their EPM model. Shot 45, 35, 83 last season, but a lot of those threes I think are really, really difficult attempts at the end of the day. Like he takes shots off of movement, off of flares, off of some pin downs from time to time, always relocating kind of off the ball as a off of offensive rebounds, which is really important with Sabonis, right? This is he's just kind of an awesome two-way player. And I think that the part of his game that hasn't gotten enough notice yet is the defense.
Yep.
He has turned himself into like a really solid big wing defender who can take on more difficult matchups.
And he's going to have to do more and more of that, right? Like that is going to be, I feel like his role this year is going to be take those matchups depending on who they end up starting. But I think that's going to be what he has to do. Yeah. I mean, notes from a Sun game, taking the Booker matchup, which, you know, had been a huge part of his overall development this year. I think. And then the other thing, as I was reading through my notes, he just was like making impactful plays throughout the whole game. And he was one of those guys, I love these guys that make like the momentum stopping shots where the other team's going on a run and then, you know, everybody remembers game winners or, you know, the three that caps off a 10-0 run for your team. How about the three that stops the 10-0 run for the other team? Those are the ones that I don't think gets appreciated enough. And as I read through my notes on Keegan, there was a lot of those where I made notes of him making big shots in those moments. And even though the 3-point percentage went down just a little bit this season, his percentage at the rim went up by almost 10. His percentage from 3 to 10 feet went up by almost 20, 10 to 16 feet. Like the only place his percentages went down were from the 3-point line. And you highlighted the level of difficulty on those. The other thing, he's been very available through 2 seasons in the NBA, 80 games played and 77 games played. So I think this is an ultimate, I don't mean this in a bad way, but like role play, like just a wing role player. He can attack a closeout in a straight line a little bit. And then you mentioned the defensive stuff. I just think this is a very valuable player in the NBA.
I think he's a valuable player in the NBA as well. It's really hard to find two-way guys who are like legitimately good defenders, who are super high level shooters, and who can create, driving and being able to, get to the rim, particularly get to a mid-range jumper more than get to the rim a lot of the time, it feels like with Keegan. The thing that he did at Iowa that we haven't seen a lot of yet is he used to like really hammer mismatches against guards.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I would like to see him like take that next jump. I would like to see him like really crush mismatches against guards because he should be able to get those given the way that their starting lineup is going to look. I would think that he would be able to find these little matchups where he's able to, run a 1-4 ball screen because he'll probably play the 4 this year with De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, him, and, Keon Ellis maybe ends up being the starter. I would like to see him be able to end up screening, getting a switch, just going down on the block. It's a little bit hard because Sabonis is always on the block. So you'd have to kind of invert the offense and have Sabonis kind of out front. And you have to maybe throw it have to be like a horn set where it's, a reversal out to Sabonis and Sabonis throwing like a high-low pass into Murray or something. You'd have to kind of figure out the way to make that work in a more substantial, interesting way, just in terms of the spacing. But I think he can do it. The big thing that I wonder about with him is the passing and the decision-making at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He just hasn't really ever shown the capacity to make good passing reads. And I wonder if that will end up kind of limiting him toward being more of I'm like an unbelievable role player who can occasionally take advantage of mismatches and be like a scoring role player. Maybe like a Tobias Harris that's like a plus defender, right? A Tobias Harris that's a plus defender probably makes an all-star game at some point, is my opinion, right?
Yeah. I mean, Tobias Harris had some really good seasons.
Yeah, like Tobias Harris averaged, over 20 points per game a couple times, right? He was at 20 points per game that year that he was in LA and Philly when he got traded. That was the
49, 40, 87 season with 8 rebounds. Like that's a pretty good year.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. Like his second year in Philly, he was at 19.6 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 47, 37, 80. Even this past season, like you said, 17 points, 49, 35, 88. The year before that, 15 points per game, 50, 39, 88.
Well,
if you add in being a great defender on top of that, that's where the real impact, I think, comes into play.
Sam, I mean, Tobias, I don't mean to turn this into a Tobias Harris thing, but that third year in the second full year, third year in Philly, he was almost 50, 40, 90, 51.2% from the field, 39.4 from 3, 89.2 from the free throw line, and average almost 7 rebounds and 3.5 assists and almost 2 stocks. Like what is he? So yeah, like that's an interesting thing but Tobias isn't ever like your primary guy that's creating the offense and everything's running through him, right? Like and so I think, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Like you said, when you add in the defense as well, that Keegan,
when you add in that he's like a serious defender as well, who does a great job on that end. Yeah, Keegan is a really, really good player. I think that goes like way under the radar, probably because he plays for the Kings, right? But also, they just signed DeMar DeRozan. I'm interested to see kind of where his role ends up settling in. You know what I mean? Like, where does he end up?
That takes the ball out of his hands even more, right? Like that was my first thought is I wondered what that meant about the Kings' thought of Keegan Murray in terms of being a primary, secondary scoring option if they felt like they had to go get a guy like DeRozan.
Yeah. No, I know. It was interesting. I think it was probably just like a pure talent acquisition move to go get DeMar.
Yeah.
But we'll see where it settles, right? But Keegan's a really good player. Like Keegan's just solid at everything except for the passing. If the passing ever comes along, he is going to be really, really something. But the passing not being there is enough of a concern for me to where I couldn't quite get him much higher than this on my list. I think that this is like right where he was on my list potentially.
Yeah, same. Yep.
Okay. Number 19, Jalen Suggs. I think people know that this show in general, the two of us, we have been higher on Jalen Suggs than probably a majority of people. We have been higher on Jalen Suggs even before this season because we saw the vision of where the defense was going and we saw the vision of what he was kind of becoming. He's a 6'5" guard who can credibly play point guard, who is inarguably, in my opinion, a top 3 defender among guards in the NBA right now. He averaged 12.6 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists this year, had a true shooting percentage, 4% above league average, averaged 15, 5, and 3 in the playoffs this year for Orlando. On top of being one of the best defensive guards in the NBA, point blank. Jalen Suggs is an absolute monster on the defensive end. He completely changes the game on that end for opposing teams on offense. You have to be completely cognizant of where he is and who he's guarding. And if he ends up getting his hands on the ball, he sprints the other way and drives transition play at a significant, serious level. Jalen Suggs was worth 8.2 wins per game last season, according to dunksandthrees.com in their EPM model. Over the last 2 years, Jalen Green has been worth 6.7. And that's 2 years combined to compare the two. I think that Jalen Suggs is just an outstanding role player. And he will be taking the mantle from Drew Holiday once Drew retires here in the next couple of years as the guy that like significantly impacts winning while knocking down shots from the perimeter, cutting at the right time, driving transition play, and being an elite level defender.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one caveat I want to get, right, is he shot almost 40% from 3 this year on 5 attempts. If that's real, we may end up being a little bit low, to be quite honest. But that has to at least hold and not drop down anywhere close to what we saw his first couple seasons in the league. And there's nothing about the jumper that makes me think otherwise. He got so efficient this season. I think that's why this isn't crazy for us to have him where he's at. Cause I think the defense speaks for itself, right? He was second team all NBA defense, number 10 in defensive player of the year voting, all of that stuff. I think you have to hope this offense at least holds at the level it was. And then at one point, he's the best guard defender in the NBA along, and makes winning plays, all the cliche things, right? He, like you said, he takes over the mantle of Holiday, Dereck, those type of players. I think another thing for me is he's on a team that I think is on the rise. And I think it's a team that has a mentality and an identity on the defensive end that fits right into him. And so I factored that in as well. Like I think this is a team that's going to be really good. It has other young talent we're going to talk about over the next 2 episodes. And what he does best, his team, coach, organization really, really values. And so I took that into account as well. He's another one, I mentioned this with Kuminga. He played 27 minutes a night. So again, it's not like he was playing 33 a night. Like I believe it was Jalen Johnson and Keegan Murray both played 33. So when you just look at the points per game or rebounds or assists, it's a little bit lower because of that. But yeah, I'm sure we're higher on him than most, but I just think he's that level defensively. And then when you add in the efficient scoring, it's just icing on top.
He just drives winning basketball. That's the thing for me. Like he gives so much energy every time he's out on the court. Like he's embraced being that guy. He's just going to run around like the Energizer Bunny the entire game. He's going to get on the floor. He's going to get loose balls. He's going to contest shots like from miles away from where he should. And he might get to like 10% of them, but he's going to make an impact on that 10%. And that's going to make an impact on the bottom line at the end of the day. I think Jalen Suggs is so worthy of a spot on this list. Like this was an easy consideration for me to put him here. I think he has the kind of just like intangible qualities that help teams win games at the highest level, to where I'm just like a pure believer in him. To me, he's the guy that's taking the mantle from Drew Holiday on this guy's going to help teams win basketball games at the highest level for the next like decade of his career.
Yeah, I'm with you. He was an easy name on my list. Like some of the ones, like even though Kuminga was one of quote unquote my guys that I put on the list, that wasn't an easy one. Like that wasn't a name that I didn't sit there and like, okay, should I even have him on here? Should it be one of these guys I left off? All of that, Suggs was not that. Suggs was very much he's on my list, and he was actually at 20 on my list. So he was one spot lower than this, but he was very solidly going to be in my top 24.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree. Okay. Bryce. That's it. That's where we're stopping tonight. We went for an hour and 40 minutes on this. You were correct.
I got trivia if you want to do a quick trivia.
Oh, we're definitely doing trivia.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure you knew. You were right. When you texted me while I was like hammered out in the Yarra Valley this weekend, and you were like, wait, like, no, let's do honorable mentions and then cut the first one shorter and then do like 18-10 and 9-1. Like I was just considering like 8-8 and 8 the whole time. This was the right way to do it. Good call, Bryce.
Every once in a while I get something right.
Yeah, you were right. Okay. We're doing trivia. Let's do it.
Okay. So
stop real quick.
Okay.
From Rachel Reynolds, Bryce's brain teasers.
Ooh, okay, Rachel. I like it.
I like a bad name. I think that we need to crowdsource the name of this segment. It's a good one, and we need to figure it out. Bryce's brain teasers is not a bad name here, but let's continue.
Okay, so this is going to build on itself as well. We can either do it all tonight or we can save it, but we'll start with the basic, with the foundation. So tonight's is players this past season in the regular season all played at least 60 games or more, minutes varying, but somewhat legitimate minutes. 3-point percentage greater than or equal to 40%. 3-point attempts greater than or equal to 5. Assists less than or equal to 2.
Oh God. So like pure shooters.
40%, 5 attempts, less than 2 assists.
And how many?
There are 6. Would you like 1 to get you started? I feel like you understand the names of guys we're working with here, but I did consider giving you 1 just because of the list.
Let's hold off. I will ask for the 1 eventually, I'm sure.
Okay.
Man, under 2 assists is a tough
so here's what's funny.
number.
Only one of these guys averages over 1.5 assists. I could have went 1.5 or lower and still had 5 of the names on the list.
Okay, so my first one is Michael Porter.
That is not correct.
No?
I will look it up. There's one there's one name on the list that I would have got. Okay, Michael must not have. Oh, he shot 39.7% from 3.
Oh, come on.
I don't do it on purpose. I just put in the sliders and go with it, or the filters, not sliders.
That's the second one that I've like missed by like 0.1 or whatever.
Those ones are almost more impressive. He was 1.51 assists, but yeah, obviously had the attempts 39.7% from 3.
5 is hard.
So a couple I will tell you this. A couple of there's some real names. Like these aren't like completely obscure names. You know, couple of these guys average almost 14 points a game. 4 of the 6 average over 10 points a game. All of them average over 20 points a game other than one, and he averaged 17.5. One of them played almost 30 minutes a night. Like, it's not like it's
so
just
wait. Say that last thing again. That they all averaged like 17 points?
No. I said over 17 minutes.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I was just saying it's not like dudes who are playing 12 minutes and like.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Like there's some real dudes on this team.
So having thought about this a little bit more, Detroit Pistons legend Malik Beasley, I would guess, is on this list because I think he was at like 40 on like 7 attempts per game last year.
On 6.9, 41.3%, 6.9 attempts. He averaged a whopping 1.4 assists in 29.6 minutes per game. Malik Beasley is one.
I'm going to go to Phoenix next because Grayson had that crazy like 55, 45, 85 year or whatever. Yep. So I'm going to say Grayson is my number 3 guess after
Grayson Allen surprisingly had a career year with assists at 3.0.
Huh. Okay. I didn't think you would have passed it that much.
Agreed.
Okay. It's funny because, you know, Keegan, I think, did this in his rookie year, but didn't do it this year because he shot 36 this year.
Keegan Murray in his rookie season, 40. Keegan Murray would have made this list last year.
I mean, there's no way that. Sam Hauser.
I was gonna say, like, that's the one I would have guessed first.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if when you said 5 attempts per game, I was like, okay, like I don't know if he got to 5 attempts per game though.
So that's going to be what's tough. That's probably what's holding you back. 3 of these guys I just noticed are just barely hitting the 5 attempts. So you may want to guess guys that you aren't sure got the volume, but actually are. Hauser, 42.4% on 5.9 attempts and a whopping 1 assist per game in 22 minutes.
Tim Hardaway Jr. was like pretty good at the start of the year last year. Did he shoot over 40? You're muted.
He did not. He shot way over on volume, but the percentage dropped by the end of the year, 35%. Did not have 2 assists a game though, so that would have qualified.
Yeah.
You want a hint?
Not yet.
Okay.
I mean, I know Kennard would be over 5 and 40. It's just I think he probably had more than 2 assists per game.
He is not on the list. Luke Kennard averaged 3.5 assists per game.
Yeah. It's hard to find the guys that are this limited in terms of like passing and like usage in general.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like Pistons-y guys because I feel like a lot of these come from your brain of like looking at like Pistons numbers, or at least that's the way I think of it.
Staying in the Pistons realm wouldn't be a bad idea.
Okay. So staying in the Pistons realm. Okay. Boyan?
Nope. Foreigner.
Oh, okay. So Simone
Fontecchio. 40.1% from 3, 5.1 attempts, 1.5 assists in 24.9 minutes. This was both that was combined.
Yeah.
Detroit and Utah.
Okay. That's a good one. So how many do you have? 3 or 4?
You have 3. You have Malik Beasley, Simone Fontecchio, Sam Hauser with 3 left to go. The two of so you haven't guessed the 2 best overall scorers, like probably the 2 best names on the list, and then probably the toughest name, the guy that actually averages the least points.
Yeah, Buddy Hield didn't shoot 40 last year, so that's annoying.
Buddy also averaged 2.8 assists.
No fucking way. That's unbelievable to me. Best overall scorers. That's hard.
I mean, it's not like they're average, like they were averaging 14 points, but
oh, okay.
It's not like they were getting crazy buckets. Let me look this real quick. And both of them did. Okay, let me give you this hint. I think you'll get. They both did it off the bench.
They both did it off the bench. Okay. Okay, bench scorers. Bench scorers who don't pass. Jordan Clarkson?
Nope. You are definitely on the right track. Think of dudes that got buckets last year that don't really pass the ball a whole lot.
Dudes who got buckets last year who don't pass the ball a lot.
Like one of them was got a lot of attention for it last year. Clarkson averaged 5 assists a game last year. Wow.
That's staggering.
And shot awful from 3, 29%.
Yeah, you're right. He didn't have a good year last year. Now I think about it. I was just trying to think of like scorers who don't pass. I'm trying to
stay in the West.
Norman Powell,
43.5% from 3 on 5.1 attempts, 1.1 assists per game while averaging 13.9 points in 26.2 minutes.
Okay.
You should get the next one.
Is it also a bench Western Conference player?
It is a very good one.
Okay. Is it Naz Reed?
Naz Reed, 41.4% on 5 attempts, 1.3 assists.
Okay. And I've got one random in the chamber. Okay. I've got because it's it's the crazy one, right? That,
if somebody gets this one, like shout out.
So it's the only reason I'm guessing this person is because I love him, and like people have known for a long time that I love him, and he finally like figured out how to play in the NBA last year. Sam Merrill is my guess.
Freaking go!
Is it really?
I swear.
Yes.
Sam. I thought I was gonna have to give you. It was another Sam. Sam Merrill, 40.4% from 3 on 5.8 attempts.
Sam Merrill is literally the only like player of that level on this question that I would have gotten. Like if it was, Seth Curry or somebody else, literally the only one I would have gotten was Sam Merrill. Because
here's the thing though.
I know that Sam had a great year last year and he's been my guy forever.
He had the most assists of anybody on the list, 1.8 per game. He led the the list. Okay, I want to do real quick, and then I'll save the rest. All right, real quick though. So regular season, we're going to do the inverse. All right, Sam? 2 players did this. Less than 30% from 3, less than 2 3-point attempts per game, greater than 5 assists per game. 2 names.
Okay, repeat that.
Less than 30%. So we're doing the opposite. People who shot awful but had assist numbers. Less than 30% from 3, less than 2 attempts, but greater than 5 assists.
Less than 2 attempts, but greater than 5 assists.
Yeah.
Okay.
So low volume 3-point shooters, bad 3-point shooters, but guys that can pass the ball.
Giannis
is one. 27.4% from 3 on 1.7 attempts, 6.5 assists.
And then I have one more, it sounds like.
There Ben Simmons did it in 15 games played. Like I'm not counting that. You can get this.
I can get this.
Bigger players that pass the ball really well. That can't
like
shoot it yet.
Sabonis? That can't shoot it yet? A hint.
No. That I didn't mean to say that. I'm just saying like that can't shoot. Yeah.
Can't.
I don't know. He might shoot it eventually. Sabonis, no volume, but actually shot 38%. Like the volume was awful, like 1, but did shoot it 38%.
Yeah, when you said yet, my brain like went like, and you said bigger. I was like, is it like a Men Thompson or something? But
no.
I don't think he had 5 assists yet last season.
Yeah.
Okay, shot under 30. I don't think Scotty was under 30. I think Scotty was fine from 3 last year.
Yeah, not Scotty Barnes.
Yeah.
Also, I just noticed that NBA.com rounded up to get this player to the 5 assists. So that's fun as well.
Rounded up to get him to 5 assists. So he's like 4.9 or 5.
4.9. He 4.95. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
But it has to be a big then, I would guess, right? Like it almost has to be like a bigger dude.
A bigger player, yeah.
So like I think Şengün was at more than that. Like I think he was at like 6 or 7 assists.
Nope. Alperen Şengün is the answer.
Oh, really?
Yep. Alperen Şengün, 29.7% from 3 on 1.8 attempts, 5.0 assists per game.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
Yep.
That was a fun one. I like that one.
I have more ready, but we'll save them. I have guys
save them for later this week.
Yeah. I have guys that shot those same 3-point percentage with the assists. So now guys that did both. And then I had guys that did both in the playoffs, and those lists are pretty fun. So
this is a great segment that we've done. It's simultaneously like the Sam Merrill pool makes me look like a complete like psychopath nerd, but also makes me look somewhat stupid like whenever I guess the wrong thing. So I love it. This is great. This is the perfect like segment to both reinforce my nerddom and then also like put me down a peg because I miss a lot of them too.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to know, want you to we will never do the inverse of this. I will not subject myself to that level of guessing because I wouldn't have pulled Sam Merrill. I would have got Sam Hauser, and that was it.
I think Sam is literally the only player of that level, that I would have even considered guessing. So
I know it is a fun segment. I enjoy finding these, and I hope the viewers, listeners do as well.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to start putting these on like TikTok and on our social feeds and things like that. So this will be good. You'll get to laugh at us again. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on. Tell the people everything they need to know.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter. Just follow over there. Anything I'm doing, podcasts, Substack, anything like that, you can find on Twitter. Otherwise, right here with Sam Vecenie on the Game Theory Podcast. Okay,
so later this week, we will do 18 to 10, barring some sort of crazy trade happening. Like if Brandon Ingram gets traded or whatever, right? there's a chance we will talk about Yabusele on Thursday
wondered about
this week, just because Yabusele, we're at 2 hours already, and I'm kind of intrigued by it a little bit and want to talk to you about it. I think it's a good signing for Philly, but let's talk about it a little bit more later.
Sure.
But yeah, barring something crazy happening in the NBA, we will be doing 18 to 10 on this list next week. Rachel Reynolds in the comments brings up, when Sam says something like this, it makes me think he's heard some things. Typically that's a good assessment. This time it is not. I do not know of anything that's like imminent right now in the league. So we'll leave it at that. Go to The Athletic, keep me employed over there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. Subscribe to the many social apps that we're going to be starting here coming up or getting moving over on Instagram, over on TikTok. Go find those whenever we get them up and everything. Follow me on Twitter, follow Bryce on Twitter, everything like that. Go hit the subscribe button on the podcast feed. Everything you can to support the show.
Hit the like button. Get it out there.
Hit the like button while you're here. It really, really helps to get this thing out there more. The algorithms are real. But until next time, we'll talk soon.